question if she's still here. I don't know where it was.
Yeah, I am here. What information are you looking for on the website that's not there?
I thought Mr. Whitaker said there was a public notice regarding for a discussion later tonight that had been published in the paper.
Published in the Monitor, yes.
Did I misunderstand? Okay. So I would think that if it was in the Monitor, it would also be on our website.
Well, I'm not sure what you want published on the website. I'm confused. We gave a link to the email address. We should maybe.
I think the public hearing announcement should be on the website.
Okay. I can post anything on the website that's desired.
Yeah.
In a matter.
I think the request is to have the YouTube channel and link available on the website. Anytime we have a public hearing or anything that goes in the paper, it ought to be on the website as well. And then while we're still in the COVID situation, if we're publishing the email address for comments, that we also publish the phone number for comments so people can dial in as well. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Mr. Scott, did you have other ones too?
And to clarify that, so everybody knows that's listening tonight, it will be under Board of Supervisors so they can find it.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes great sense.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else hanging out to join the public comment period? Then I'll go ahead and close the public comment period.
I see no more callers.
All right. Go back to the continue with the agenda. Under staff, committees, organization reports, and presentations, we have first item under that category is VDOT monthly status report, and I understand Mr. Kyle Bates from VDOT is going to make some comments relative to that report. Mr. Bates, are you with us?
Yes, sir, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Well, Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the board, I appreciate you all having me tonight. I've got a bunch of things I can go through. I assume you all have gotten our June report, the report that we put together every month and send out to county staff. I can go through some items on there, and then I'm going to kind of jump back and forth on some added things, and at the end, if we have any discussions we want to have, we can do that too. So,
all right.
The first thing I'll talk about is kind of just a general VDOT update as far as COVID-19 goes. So as a state agency, we have not slowed down at all. We are still doing our day-to-day jobs. We have different avenues available to our state employees if they do encounter the coronavirus. But at the end of the day, I can tell you in Amelia County, I think right now we had almost everybody at the area headquarters in today and working. We're finding, as I'm sure you all are, well, I can tell you all are, because here we are talking via a computer. We are finding new and inventive ways to do an older job. We are maintaining our social distance while still patching potholes, cutting grass, good old-fashioned VDOT maintenance work. We're splitting up our shifts, whereas normally we would have all 15 or so employees at the area headquarters come in at the same time. We're trying to be smart about how then we stagger our shifts in. Maybe the first crew comes in at 6 o'clock, the second crew comes in at 8 o'clock. VDOT is very much production driven and plan driven, and I will say we are very much putting our personal safety and also the personal safety of the traveling public first, as we should. But some of the production may slow down, but we are still hitting it. So on to some of the things that are on the report, just our routine maintenance. The biggest thing that we're working on right now is our mowing. We are hitting our secondary mowing very hard right now. We were hoping to get some of that stuff done, hopefully to have our first cycle done before the July 4th holiday. That is our plan for now. So we are hitting it as fast as we can. We have a couple pipe replacements going on, one on 681 Clementown and one on Route 636. And then we're also working on Shoulder Stone. The sections of Route 616 Genito Road recently resurfaced, I believe. We are now working to make sure that the shoulder stone is adequate so that it holds the structure of the pavement. So I had a couple other updates, some of which were on the weekly report, some of which were kind of on a case-to-case basis with some of the board members. Mr. Gleason, I know he's not here, but he had me looking at a section on 616 by Sailors Creek. There's a curve there. I'll call it a super elevated curve if you're traveling down 616. And there seems to be some super elevation issues with the roadway. This is a roadway that was brought in, I'm going to assume, back with the Byrd Act back in the 30s, has been maintained as such. We tried to do a little bit of work prior to the resurfacing to fix somewhat of what we can of the super elevation. We basically had to try and scratch the surface. The issue we run into is the intersection of Sailors Creek is at a lower elevation than 616 itself. So it presents some issues with trying to correct the super elevation. When I say super elevation, you go around a curve, you know, similar to a racetrack, you want to have that inside bank. What's happening is it's slightly altered and it wants to throw you somewhat to the outside. So there are some alternatives out there. I'm having we looked at our crash data. There's nothing out there, no crashes reported since 2012, but I'm going to have our traffic engineering staff take a look at it and see if they can come up with maybe some warning signage of some sort. And if we really want to dive into it, we feel that it's a big enough issue in the county, we can maybe look to use some secondary 6-year plan funds in the outer years to rectify it. But for now, we're going to look at some warning signage and more to come on that. In regards to some of the land use issues, I know I received some complaints about the Norfolk Southern Railroad crossing. I believe it was over Route 604 Chula. That one was Norfolk Southern came in and they get a permit through us for the traffic control, but at the end of the day, Norfolk Southern owns the railroad. They're going to do the work that they need to do. We had them go out and look at it, and they are not willing to come out and repave the approaches. So that leaves it on us between Amelia County and VDOT. We're going to take a look at it, and there may be some options to raise the grade coming to the crossing itself. We're talking about potentially doing a project at that point, and we have to make sure that the drainage is appropriate. So I'm going to look in a little bit more. I tried to get Norfolk Southern out there to do a little bit more work, but they feel that it is adequate, and we are somewhat at their mercy. So we'll see if there's some more that we can do. Mr. Scott, I know that was one that you were interested in. As soon as I find out some more, I will let you know. But we may have to get creative there. So more to come on that one as well. Overall,
Kyle, I think it's just the transitions need to be smoothed out and tapered.
Okay.
Is that your responsibility, or are they responsible for so many feet from the tracks?
Yeah, they're responsible for their right of way. It's really going to boil down to the fact that they feel that it is an adequate surface, and I don't know, if it is within their right of way. I'm not sure we have much of a leg to stand on. But we'll have to.
Are you allowed to do repairs within the right of way?
Within the CSX right of way, we have to get CSX flaggers to do so, and they have to allow us, similar to if we were to have someone come on and do some work in our right of way, we give them a permit. It's a very similar process for CSX. So a lot of tape to jump through. We'll leave it at that. But there may be something that we can try and do from within VDOT's right of way to better it. We'll work on it. More to come.
Mr. Bates, you've said several times that they believe they've done a good job. I haven't heard your opinion. What is VDOT's opinion of the quality of work they've done? And yes, I am putting you on the spot with that.
So I will say it does ride rough. And we're gonna, Mr. Easter, I think we can try and get out there, and within the VDOT right away, there may be some improvements that we can do. I just don't have a whole lot of I don't have a leg to stand on to get them to come back out there and accomplish that work. So,
Well, maybe we need to call some of our senators or other state officials. I have a hard time believing that CSX cannot have pressure put upon them if they've done a poor quality job. And I haven't been to the site, so I have no opinion of it. But I find that really hard to believe that they can't be called upon or escalated within the CSX organization to do better.
well, I think that
I don't think it should fall to VDOT to fix something they've not done well.
right. I think it
I've
boils
already,
down to-
excuse me, I've already spoken to Spanberger's office about it several times, and they assigned a staff worker to work it out with me, not only the condition of the crossing, but also the failure to notify neighbors, and sometimes, especially on Coverly Road, where they completely blocked the intersection one day without notifying more than a few hours in advance the night before when people were already locked in for the night.
Yeah.
So I had constituents that couldn't get out for doctor's appointments, and it's a problem, and I brought it up to her, and they are still looking into it, but CSX is really tough to deal with.
Well, Mr. Scott, to add to that, I ran into a very similar issue in a neighboring county where there was a whole subdivision that was landlocked. And we luckily found out about that one about a day or so before the work was going to take place. I was able to make contact with an individual with Norfolk Southern, and we were able to get out ahead of it. So honestly, VDOT kind of had to pick up some of the torch and go out and put some door hangers and some other things, and let people know that the work is coming. Because more often than not, if you know the work is coming, and as long as you have coordination with the local fire and EMS, we can figure something out in case of an emergency. That puts a lot of people at ease. And if we can get ahead of those things, and I do feel that, with the contact that I've made for future closings, I'm hopeful that that person will reach out to me, and we can get ahead of it from a landlocked situation. Because you're right, you don't want someone to have a heart attack behind this railroad crossing, and then nobody can get to them.
The second time when they did the repairs, it was much better thanks to you. But the first time when they tore it all up, they completely blocked it for the day.
Well, the hope is that should get better. I can't speak for them, but I will say that the two examples I've had since making contact with them, they have given me the information so that we can kind of step up and do a little bit more from a VDOT PR standpoint.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Do they not have any legal requirements for those things? They're not required to notify?
That I cannot speak for, not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Don't know yet.
Okay.
I'm not letting it go, Joseph. I'm still looking into it.
I appreciate that, Mr. Scott. I think that's great. To your district, I'll let you go with it.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Page.
Yes, sir. So I want to also talk about some of the resurfacing. So you all have the schedule, some of the stuff that was completed within the last month, and then there is a table that provides you basically the list as a whole for this paving season from spring to fall. We're really in the heart of it right now. I did get a couple things from some constituents, and I very much see the perception here. Mr. Easter, I think you and I had spoken via email back and forth, but the perception is, a lot of the resurfacing, we resurface 360 over and over and over again. And I think I've heard that in a previous board meeting as well. I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So while we may see the construction out on 360, it's not always the same type of work. I will say that you're probably getting a little bit more attention, which when you think about it, that is the main vein through Amelia County. So you get the most traffic there, you get the heaviest traffic there. That does make a lot of sense. But that being said, not everything we do out there is a full resurfacing. It's not always your plant mix asphalt. In fact, I would say most of the work that we've done out there has been a product that we call latex, which is a very thin treatment, and it's actually a preventative maintenance treatment. We use it on a lot of our primaries that carry a lot of traffic, heavy traffic. It's a cheaper way to allow us to maintain our infrastructure longer. So you will see, and it is black. It looks like black asphalt, but trust me when I say it goes down at a very, very thin, less than an inch lift, and it is a sealant to hold that pavement over for years to come. So You haven't seen a whole lot of that outside of 360. What you've seen is your resurfacing, your hard surface treatment, chip, tar and chip, things like that. I will say too, the department as a whole, and you all may have heard me say this in the last board meeting that I attended at the school, but the resurfacing program from the state as a whole is taking a hard look at where that money is going. We allocate a certain amount of funds to primaries, interstates, high volume secondaries, low volume secondaries, various different systems throughout the state. And we are shifting the way that for the 2021 schedule and beyond, we are shifting where those funds are going. And I think we're going to start seeing a whole lot more funding coming towards the high volume secondary side of things, which I think is what probably everybody on this this video is going to want to hear. So, and I'm hoping that Amelia County for sure is going to feel that when you get the lane miles for the 2021 resurfacing schedule, you should see more love out on the secondaries, which I think is what everybody is hoping for. And you all are not going to be the only ones to say that. So I'll say that's some good news there. But when you see it out on 360, don't always think it's, they're getting all of the asphalt or all of the surface treatment. Many times it's a very cheap, thin treatment that holds it over for a long time, because we don't want those heavy trucks to tear up parts of 360, because then y'all are really going to be calling me. So anyways, a couple other things, projects going on. There is the Smart Scale project to replace the bridges 360 at 360 Business. That project is estimated to go to construction in February of 2021. I sent out an email to some of the first responders to show them the detour routes in regards to the ramps. There's not really going to be a detour for through traffic on 360, because we're able to use the westbound and eastbound bridges. Since we do have 2 lanes on each of them, we are able to utilize 1 lane in each direction, so we never actually have to detour 360 through traffic. The ramps will have to be detoured on the 360 Business, but I'm looking for minor inconveniences there, and we've run that through your first responders, your schools, and things like that. But that project is slated to begin in February of 2021 at this moment. And the very last thing I've got here is we are currently working on a Route 360 arterial management study. So what that is, I know that your county staff has dived into some different conversations. That is looking at the corridor of 360 as a whole, and much of Amelia County included, also sections of Chesterfield, to look at. We want to keep people moving on these routes. We want to keep people moving. After all, VDOT is keep Virginia moving, not to be cheesy, but we want to make sure that the 360 traffic has priority and is able to move through the county and preserve that network. We are looking to look at the different intersections, look at the access management, look at the safety. We have a consultant that is looking at all of these things. At many of the intersections in Amelia County. There should be a website to launch this study within the next month. And as part of that website, there's going to be some public involvement periods. We're going to have some surveys that go out. We're kind of doing everything social distancing right now, as I can tell you all are as well. So there's going to be some more correspondence there in regards to when you all are going to be able to weigh in on some of these studies. This is merely a study. None of these proposed projects are necessarily going to happen unless we prioritize them and apply for them through different projects, maybe secondary 6-year plans, Smart Scale. I can work with your county staff and come up with some different options for funding to maybe move with some of these projects. Some of them may be small safety improvements. You close off an intersection here, interchange here, where traffic is crossing over 360 and maybe you've got safety issues. Some of them could be mumble strips. There's many different options that we're going to look at and take a look at the 360 corridor as a whole. And we should have some very good recommendations for some future projects if we so wish to apply. So that is the last I've got, but if you all have anything for me, I can talk about whatever you've got. I can take down some notes if y'all need me to take a look at some things.
Any questions from any additional questions from board members? If not, Mr. Bates, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, and a good detailed report, but appreciate that very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. You all have a good night.
All right.
Kyle.
Next item on the agenda is that of the Amelia County School Board. I believe the superintendent is going to give us an update on school activities and so forth. How are you, Doctor?
I'm doing well. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So a few notes for you. Our high school had a virtual graduations on May 26th, 27th, and 28th. And each graduate had approximately 10 minutes in the auditorium. We're very appreciative of the high school staff who made these events possible. We received many compliments from families, and we would still like to conduct a full graduation ceremony if we're permitted by group sizes. So we're still waiting to hear on that. But in the meantime, you can see the graduation video on the high school's webpage that was placed there today. It's very moving to see all the pictures of students and families, so I hope you'll take the time to do that. Summer school sessions started this week and will continue through July 24th. The instruction is virtual through Virtual Virginia platform and teacher check-ins with the students. Our high school students needing remediation or credit recovery are participating in APEX online courses, and Chromebooks have been issued to our students for their use during this time. In your board packet, you have the financial report for May. Revenues and expenditures are appropriate for the 11th month of the fiscal year. We continue to conserve funds to offset anticipated losses in sales tax revenue and lottery revenues so that we can carry them over to FY21. And speaking of carryover, you should also have a copy of the status of the expenditure of the carryover funds from FY19. Projected costs and actual costs for each item are provided, along with the account status of each item. Many of these projects have been completed, a few have been canceled, and unless there are specific questions, this will probably be the last time that we provide that report for the carryover funds. And we do appreciate your support and what we've been able to do with that. One other note is that today we put out a reopening survey. We sent a message to parents asking them to complete a survey regarding their preferences for next year. We have a task force examining how to operate within the requirements established by the governor, the Centers for Disease Control, and the Virginia Department of Health. As you might guess, we must exercise a 6-foot distance between students in classes and on school buses. And this one requirement alone means that we can only transport about 1/3 of the students that we would normally transport on a bus, and we can have only about half of our normal number of students in a classroom at any one time. Our teachers will have to become proficient at both online instruction and in-class instruction. Our cleaning routines will be enhanced, along with many other mitigation procedures that are required to be documented in an official health plan. Our directors, principals, and a total of about 50 people are working on the logistics of reopening. It's certainly not what any of us want for our schools, but it is the situation at this time. Our survey asks parents to let us know if they want remote learning for their student, which might be similar to what some people would call homeschooling, but ours will be provided by a certified Amelia teacher. Or if a family wants blended hybrid learning, meaning coming to school 1 to 2 days a week, and then the remainder of the time is from home. Again, this is not our preference, but it does meet the requirements that have been set forth for school divisions. We need to know this information for every student in the school division so that we can create a schedule for the upcoming year. So having said that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. regarding what's happening in the school division.
All right, thank you so very much. Board members, questions for Dr. Harper?
Dr. Harper, I just wanted to say my daughter started one of the online summer school classes this week, and so far is off to a good start. It's a very effective process at delivering the Chromebook to her with limited contact, so thank you for that. And we share your disappointment over the fall calendar at this point, or instruction method at this point as well, but appreciate you doing everything you can within the current requirements. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions for Dr. Harper?
Mr. Chairman, I had a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Sean.
Dr. Harper, I just, although I don't have direct contact with the schools and on the school board, just wanted to let you know from the parents that have I've been talking to, or actually have been coming to me, that they are very fired up and upset. And I know you have no control of this, but they want their kids in school and their kids in school full time. What I feel the problem is going to be, just something to think about down the road. There will be ramifications as far as our citizens expecting their children to be in school full time versus next year our citizens wanting to fund the schools when their kids aren't in school, getting what they consider adequate learning. I've been advising everybody, I would urge everybody to push back. Our citizens need to talk to our school board. Our school board needs to collaborate with other regions, and all of the regions need to go and let these upper people know that they're not doing what is best for their educations and their futures. I'm afraid that they're all going to be held back to a certain degree, myself personally, and that's the attitude that I'm receiving, well received from a lot of parents right now. A lot of people are even threatening homeschooling, which is not going to be good for our student body count either.
I understand this is an extremely challenging time. The governor had the Virginia Department of Education had a task force to advise the governor. That's just one source of information that was provided to him. I completely understand, because I would like to see every student in school every day. I'm very worried about the long-term impact on our students, on our families, and
Yes, ma'am.
And our staff will have so much more work. You might think that if half of our students to choose the virtual route does not mean that our teachers have any less work than they will have. In fact, they will have more, because they'll be keeping up with those students and providing videotaped instruction and having to prepare that in advance along with the materials, as well as working on what might be only one day a week. We just don't know yet. With students, trying to keep those students up with everything. And several school divisions, we've had conversations. What we're proposing is pretty consistent with what most other divisions are doing, only because we're all limited by the number of students that we can put on a school bus. And you have to put them 6 feet apart, means every other seat. And a 77-passenger bus becomes a 15-passenger bus, which is just crazy. And I think the bottom line, to some extent, is the risk to children, and also whether or not our risk management companies will assume the risk if we vary from what we've been told to do from the governor's order and the Recover Restart plan that's been provided. So we are looking into other options, but we do feel our hands are relatively tied. And so I completely understand what you're saying, and am very concerned about those same things.
Dr. Harper, is that an appropriations change that we need to, the board needs to take care of? I noticed change of appropriations that's the board has approved to the Board of Supervisors?
Yes, so, yes, so we've made a request, and this came up rather quickly. We received CARES Act funds via a grant, and we had to submit an application for that grant. I'll provide it to one member of the Board of Supervisors, and I'll happy to share my screen if I can figure that out. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Please let me know. Can you see that document?
Yes.
Okay, so Amelia County Public Schools will be receiving an allocation once our grant is approved for about $280,000 from the state. And we had planned to use this grant to offset possible reductions in state revenue, much like we plan to use it for the carryover monies that we requested and that you have approved. Some of these funds will be used for professional development to help train our staff on distance learning, to provide additional curriculum training, some sanitizing supplies, some substitutes in the event that an employee is on extended leave due to COVID-19. A portion of this grant is also set aside by federal requirements for Amelia Academy. That's just over 20,000 private school use for sanitizing. You can see that Amelia County Public Schools received the smallest per pupil allocation of CARES grant monies of any of the school divisions in our region. And that's why I'm sharing this with you. So when we learned that the county had CARES Act funds and might be willing to share some of those funds with us, we took a look at what we are really not going to be able to fund through this money. And in the letter that you received, it identifies some things, just provide you with a list of things like temperature kiosks and touchless thermometers, additional sanitizers, perhaps some Wi-Fi stations to put in the community to help families, webcams for our teachers who will be teaching, more Chromebooks so that we can reach our younger population of students, including touch Chromebooks, USB drives for us to get out the information, coolers, bags, and carts, because we will now have to deliver food to classrooms instead of just having children go to the cafeteria, plexiglass for our cars and our restrooms. And so there's a whole host of things that we could use some additional help with. And so that's why we are making this request of the county at this time.
Question from board members?
Yes, Mr. Harris, is that the one you were talking about, or are you talking about the resolution for $28,280.20?
I let her go ahead because, but no, you're right. That's the one I'm talking about, Mr. Scott. You're right. That's the one I'm talking about.
Well, since we're on this one, do you want to go ahead and address it? Do we want to go ahead and do this one now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
Mr. Chairman, I see that we have later in tonight's agenda, we have another request, that one from the 4-H Center as well. Mr. Harvey shared with us some very interesting information offline about how other counties around us are approaching this. And I personally really liked what I saw from that, of having a small group of board members. I think it looked like Nottoway was doing like 2 board members serve on a committee to determine how to distribute that money versus every request having to come in through here. Because I don't think it requires board approval anyway. I think my understanding is this CARES Act money can be distributed by the county administration.
Right.
My misunderstanding. Plus, that's not, but in general, it's my recommendation as well.
Mr. Harvey, you want to go ahead and take care of that, and then I'll come back to this resolution, this other item that Mr. Scott talked about.
So I guess we're referring to the Nottaway scenario.
Yes, right. That's exactly right.
Okay, so that is, you jump ahead to item 7 on the agenda, the fund request, Holiday Lake. And they had asked for $10,000. Wilson, for those who don't know, is a Dade County native. Spent his career up in Lynchburg working for the bank. Now he's the president of Holiday Lake. So he's a when this came in, and I think Mr. Easter had also shared with everybody some information about another county that was considering making business grants. So what we did is we identified an email that came in from Nottaway County that we shared with everybody. At the very beginning of it, it said that Nottaway County had made a 2-person committee to examine the request and sort of that'll report to the Board of Supervisors. And what we were looking for is if the staff has to do it, we're not the decision maker, so it might be time for too much back and forth, which we really don't have time for. So we were.
So you're talking about a two-person committee of the board that would look at opportunities which would come directly to the board, and then you wouldn't have to, it would take some of that.
That's right.
That would be expended getting it there.
That's right. Not the email says 2 members of the Board of Supervisors have been appointed to recommend priorities, accept applications, and report to the full board. So that's what we forwarded to the County Board of Supervisors. And it sounds like a good idea to us.
So Taylor, you're recommending a committee be formed with 2 board members plus staff, right?
That's not what this email said, but we can do that.
Wouldn't the staff still be accepting all the applications and preparing them for the 2 board members?
Yes.
Well, I was more concerned about the priorities than I was the application.
I agree.
We need to know what's the policy. Are we going to give 40% to the schools? Are we going to give 40% to businesses in that program that I think came out of Chesterfield, and then 20% to community groups, or what are we going to do? That's the biggest thing that I was looking for.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Because I think then once the board sets the priority, or that committee of the subset of the board sets the priorities, then I'm confident administration can act on that and implement it well.
One thing I would like to point out is if it goes that we're going to make either grants or loans to up to 50 businesses for $10,000, Mrs. Cave doesn't have the staff to handle that at current. So we would have to make some adjustments if that's the actual program that the board came up with. Not that I think that anybody would, but we just got to watch how the work flows.
All right, I like the idea of the two-person committee of the board working with staff in order to in this regard. Is that a recommendation? Was that a recommendation you were making, Mr. Easton?
Yes, sir, it is. Based on what Mr. Harvey shared as well, I appreciated him sharing that.
What's the pleasure of the rest of the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. As a sort of procedural matter, the board still needs to appropriate the CARES Act money. I'm not sure that's been done yet. If you have, I apologize, but I would recommend that the board appropriate the CARES Act money, and then appoint a subcommittee to work with staff to allocate those funds, consistent with the goals of the board and the CARES Act. But the county has to first appropriate the funds before they can be spent.
All right.
Do we need a vote or a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion.
So I'll make the motion that the board appropriate the funds, the CARES Act funds, the $1.X million it was.
All right, got a motion, further discussion on the motion? If not, let's vote on it. District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4,
Aye.
and District 5 votes aye. All right, that motion is carried. Now, do we have any board members who would like to volunteer to serve on that as part of a two persons from the board along with staff?
I'd like to
Mr. Harris,
nominate
I'll
Mr.
volunteer to
Wyatt.
serve.
Well, perfect, because I wanted to nominate
That's
you.
fine.
I think as a small business owner, I think that's a great
Right,
representative
so,
for us.
so who do we have? Who do we have?
And I'll nominate Mr. Easter.
Mr. Easter?
Seems fair.
Mr. Easter, and then you were nominated.
I
Yes, sir.
nominated Sean, yes. Mhm.
All right, so consider yourself appointed. Consider yourself appointed from the board.
Thank you.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Harper.
Yes, sir. We have one other item. That is the $28,000 you're referring to.
That's right, it's in our booklet. That's
Yes,
correct.
sir. And
Okay.
Ms. Bullock is here, and she's going to explain why we need that transfer.
All right,
Okay, so every year the schools budget money for free breakfast at the elementary school. School closed early this year, as you all know, and so we had $28,280.20 budgeted left over for school breakfast or elementary breakfast that we would like to transfer from the local fund into the cafeteria fund to help us make payroll through the summer as the cafeteria isn't receiving any revenue as schools close.
all right. Board members, this was in your board packet. Hopefully you had an opportunity to look at it. Questions or comments?
I move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve the request. Further discussion on the motion? If not, District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4,
Aye.
District 5 votes aye. Motion carries. All right, you got that approval.
Thank you.
Anything else you wanted to say as closing, Dr. Harper?
No, thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you so very, very much. Board members don't have any other questions. I think they've questioned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next item under staff committee organization reports and presentation are your board members' activity reports. Those of you who have reports to give, District 2.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I don't have any report. Thanks.
Okay, District 3,
I don't have anything to report either.
District 4,
There's been no meeting since due to the pandemic, nothing to report.
District 5 has nothing to report at this particular point. I have one that I'm going to next week for the Tobacco Commission, but no, I don't have anything either. All right, thank you. We're now at old business, old and new business. Board of Supervisor salary options. Board will discuss options on their compensation. Mr. Harvey, how about bringing me up to date on this?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we've had two requests to handle what would have been salaries in a different way. And because we'd never done anything like that before and weren't really sure it could be done or what documentation would be required to do it, we wanted the board to have an open discussion with council and get it, or do whatever they could do in open with council to give us some clear direction. And one was a request to be paid as opposed to salary. One person would like to just rent an office. It works out better for them. And the other party would like to, for want of a better word, bank the money and when the time seemed right, direct check to be written to a charity or an organization for them. So that's obviously a different set of accounting that we would have to be ready for, watch out. So instead of just going ahead and doing it and making our way without direction, we wanted some direction. And I think Mr. Gore is up to speed on all of this. Everybody should have gotten a memo late this afternoon that lays out some thoughts, but I'm sure he's able to explain and answer any questions.
Mr. Gore, would you mind making a few comments relative to this issue?
Sure thing, Mr. Chairman. We looked at the state law on board salaries, and there is a provision that allows a board member to take in lieu of the established salary to instead be reimbursed for certain office expenditures incurred in performing duties as the supervisor. Now, if someone goes that route, those reimbursements cannot exceed what the board member would have earned through the salary. So there's a clear mechanism to get reimbursements for office costs versus salary. As far as a scenario where the board, as it says, the administrator explained, sort of banks a member's salary and then instead of paying it out and then pays it to some other third party, charity or what have you, at some point, it's not clear to me that there's a mechanism in the statute for that process. You know, if someone strongly wanted to take that route, I think we need to look at that more and certainly talk to your auditors and accountants. But as just far as the plain language of the statute, it appears to me that once a salary is established, it has to be paid out, and the only option other than paying it to the elected board member is for them to take office cost reimbursements in lieu of that salary. So we did a brief memo that sorry you just got it today, but we just got it to Taylor today. So that's how we see the law on these options, and maybe there's more scenarios or questions you all have. I'm happy to answer, or you can always call me or email me if you think of them later.
That information we did get, and I got a copy of it in front of me here.
Okay.
That pretty much handles that issue. Any board members have any additional comments or questions? Because I would think that that's an individual thing that you pretty much spelled out what you got to do, what you can do based upon the information that you sent.
Mr. Harris, I do have one sort of question.
Sure.
The first scenario, and I understand, Mr. Gore, it's written and it's legal, but just looking at the figures, it looks like to me that is a loophole of tax evasion. If you could take your salary and because you're receiving something for that in lieu of supplies or office space, but the same as a salary, you're gaining personally, but you're not paying taxes on it. It seems like somebody up the system created this as part of that monster problem that we have in our country.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't asked to research the income tax question. It's not,
Right.
On its face, I assume it could potentially count as income to the member. I don't know. I haven't looked at that.
Okay. Well, I apologize. And you were just talking about the exact thing on the surface. Okay.
Right. Okay. But I'd certainly advise any board member that elects to do that to talk to their tax advisor.
Right.
Okay. I see.
Mr. Gore, you provided us with the information, so anyone who wants to do anything beyond that, based upon what you presented them, that they should get with the appropriate person.
That's right, and if there's things that aren't answered, I'm happy to look into it further.
All right.
I actually would like to take you up on that offer to push further on it, because on the piece of donating the salary, I don't agree with wherever the request came from to pay somebody else, but donating the salaries in nonprofits, as you said, it's not in your memo. You said it's not addressed. So I don't know that that says you can't do it. I'd appreciate that being pushed further.
I'm happy to do that, Mr. Chairman. Again, as you all know, this is a Dillon rule state, and we can really only do what the statute says we can do.
Exactly
Unless
right.
it's something that's deemed necessary
Right.
for the exercise of essential government functions. So that's why I sort of hedge on that side on an initial analysis, but on the conservative side, as far as interpretation of the statute. But Mr. Easter, I'm happy to look into it more, and we can ask around and see if any other if there's examples of elected officials in other localities doing that kind of thing, and get you some more information.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gordon, for providing that information.
Yes, sir.
Further questions to board members on that issue? All right, then let's go to the next item, which is a request of Supervisor Easter. He wanted to, Supervisor Easter has requested discussion concerning a citizen's complaint regarding automatic, semi-automatic gunfire at Daybreak Estates. You want to elaborate on that, Mr. Easter?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this has taken on quite a life of its own since this item was published in the agenda. I'm going to first just address the original content of, yes, it is, to address the content of the original intent, and then I'd like to discuss a little further as well. As the agenda item says, I simply wanted to share feedback from a resident of Daybreak Estates. That subdivision is within the district that I represent, and I have been contacted by a resident on numerous occasions sharing his concern that there is semi-automatic gunfire occurring very close to his home. That subdivision, the lots are between 1 and 2 acres, and his concern was for safety as well as a noise concern about disrupting the events at his home. I shared with the citizen on each time that he's contacted me that while I do have some sympathy for him for the noise aspect, that I am a strong believer in not only gun rights, but in property rights. And as we have discussed earlier this year, when the solar panels came up, for example, I have said that I was supportive of people being able to do what's within their legal rights with their own property. And that as long as the people firing their guns were within their existing legal rights, that I was supportive of that too. The citizen has pushed me multiple times saying he thinks that there is interest among the county in actually having some restrictions on guns, which I said I did not believe there was appetite for that. But after many conversations, I did agree that I would bring up the concern at the board meeting here, as I'm doing. But again, my personal recommendation is that I do not believe Amelia County is a place for additional gun restrictions, and I am in favor of continuing people have their property rights to do anything that's legal. I have had a conversation with a gentleman who is doing the shooting of the guns to make sure that he is staying within his property. And he has discussed the berm that's been created that they're shooting into as well, and some other considerations they are having for the neighboring property owners. You know, I do think this gets to be one of those situations where sometimes when you're doing something on your own property, there are impacts to others, like in the case of noise here. But that is part of what comes from living in close quarters, and I encourage everyone to try to work it out peacefully among their neighbors. So that is the entirety of the agenda item. However, if you would allow me a moment more, Mr. Harris, I would like to address the concerns that arose yesterday throughout the county when this was spread around. Number one, we're in a very sensitive environment these days from a national, state, and even local level. And I want to encourage our citizens to not react swiftly and with limited information. What we saw yesterday occurring was someone who literally misread what was stated on our agenda. and in the world we live in, fired off a video on Facebook is stating some very incorrect information, attributing it not only to myself, but to another supervisor who was in no way involved at all. And frankly, those misinformation then spun quite out of control up to the point of people wanting to protest at the Amelia County Courthouse today. And I just encourage all of our citizens not only to wait and look for facts, but also, make sure that they're asking questions before jumping to conclusions there. And I will admit I was really disappointed in many of our citizens yesterday for doing that. I think we've worked it out since then, and the correct information has gotten out, but it's an unfortunate situation that occurred. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
All right, good. Any comments or questions from other board members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would echo Mr. Easter's comments, and I would also like to add that I, for one, and I know Joseph and Sean are very readily available on Facebook, Messenger, telephone, email. All of our information is out there in public for people to contact us, and we respond very quickly. So there's no need for this kind of thing. If there's any misconstruing of what's on an agenda, just contact us in one way or another, and we'll give you the story.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Scott. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add to it that I agree with Mr. Easter as well. Also, on that note, I have over 3 hours of phone records from yesterday to prove that the citizens of Amelia County obviously do not want any type of firearms control whatsoever. I could show you my phone and that'll prove that. I had calls from every district yesterday. And I do appreciate those people that took the time to call and ask rather than jump to conclusions. Also, I went to the meeting at the courthouse this evening as well, right before this meeting. And a small group of citizens there, I explained this situation, explained why Joseph would be talking about it. And I think it was a huge misunderstanding, and everybody seems to be on the same page. We're all aligned. They just, not everybody realized it yesterday.
All right. All right. Thank you guys for that. Those
Thank you for that, Sean.
Thank you.
Sir.
All right. Can we move on?
Please.
All right. Next item. Committee appointments. The following appointments are needed. Amelia Day Committee. Their terms expired June 30th, 2020. Becky Morris, Sherry Warren, Mary Ann Griles, and Christina Easter. That's for the Amelia Day Committee. For the Building Codes Appeals, we got Frank West of District 2. His term expired February 28th, 2020. And the Electoral Board, Mamie Barley at large, her term expired February 28, 2020. Let's take the Amelia Day Committee first. Are there any appointments to be made? Mr. Harvey, has anybody from that committee contacted you relative to this officers who are persons who are being considered here?
Mr. Chairman, I have not heard from anybody from the Amelia Day Committee about these upcoming vacancies. Ms. might have, but I have not.
Any board members want to make any appointments this afternoon or tonight, or you want to?
Well, are these 4 people, Mr. Chairman, are these 4 people willing to serve again, or do we know that?
That's my question.
Yeah, I'm a little confused why this is being brought with no additional information. It's very challenging to address.
I would, Mr. Harvey, why don't we contact these folks and just find out whether or not they're willing to continue?
Certainly. Yes, sir.
And how about, I would say the same thing with Building Codes and the Electoral Board, if that's the case.
Well, Mr. Chairman, on those two, I'd like to know, why are we finding out in June that they expired in February. This committee appointment item is on every agenda, and we should be hearing about it in December or January, so we have time to look into who we want, or if the person wants to serve again. For instance, I understand Frank West is perfectly willing to serve again, but I've never met him. I'd like to be able to talk to him. And we have a new process where we have to allow the other board members to speak with potential members of all boards and committees. So we need to be advised in advance when these things are going to expire so that we can be prepared. And when it comes time like tonight, we're ready to go.
We're ready to go. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying.
This is Brenda.
Yes.
I try to keep up with the board book. Part of it is because we switched from a real meeting to a electronic meeting. That's not an excuse at all. I try to rely on the people that rule these meetings. But when I went through the board book again a couple of times, I realized that these have expired, and I wanted to put them on as soon as possible.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have a question about I have a question specifically about the electoral board. When I was a member of the electoral board, it was a judge appointment. The recommendation comes from the board member, and the appointment is made by the judge.
That is correct.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
It's a little more as well. I think the parties have some input. The party that's in power in the governor's office gets two of the three, and they also have input to the circuit court judges to who's going to be appointed.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, I do have some worries about that term having been expired. I mean, the Amelia Day Committee is a non-political position. The zoning appeals, I don't think we've got any active appeals. The electoral board, though, as a member of the electoral board, she's been voting on decisions that the electoral board makes, including that they're in the process of hiring a new registrar. I do have some worry that that may have some ramifications of someone whose terms expired having been participating and making what I think are legal decisions, or governed decisions, maybe is a better word for it.
I have those concerns as well, not as a political point because I'm not involved in that, but I would love to keep things up to date, and unless these people communicate with me, I can't keep them up to date.
I agree. That wasn't a reflection on you, Brenda. That was just kind of looking at the difference between the kind of the impact of the positions. But thank you. I agree with your comment.
Mr. Harvick, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first time I've seen that those positions been that far behind. Wouldn't you agree? That hadn't happened before.
That's the first time in my memory. I think the electoral board usually keeps up with it as well as the paid registrar. So I'm sort of surprised it's gotten to us because all we're doing is making a recommendation.
All we're doing is making a recommendation. That's right. But that's the first time I've seen.
Yeah, I agree with that point.
Let's work on that staff.
What does that mean? Let's work on it.
Staff, can we put that in their hands to go ahead and contact these folks to find out whether or not they are willing to continue? Actually, which district is this from? District 2, I'm sorry.
Well, Frank West is District 2, and as I said, I'm inclined to not really nominate him, but I just want to talk to him first. I don't want to nominate somebody for a committee that I've never met or spoken with.
Right. I'm hearing you. But so what? Okay.
He wants to serve again, and I'll probably be okay with that. But I have his number. Taylor gave me his number, and I'm going to try to get in touch with him.
Okay.
We'll work it out for next month.
All right, Taylor, and can you do the same thing with this electoral board appointment, that they contact those folks to find out whether they?
We've got a new registrar in place. They've got an election next week, but I'll try to contact her. I'll go up and see her tomorrow and
Okay.
see where she is on that.
All right, okay.
And the Amelia Day Committee had evolved from the Board of Supervisors making appointments that they found to the Amelia Day Committee president, bringing forward names that they wanted. It evolved several years ago into something. We need to pick the people that have worked with us as opposed to receiving the folks that volunteer to you all that might not work out. So I will see if I can identify the chairman or chairperson of the Amelia Day Committee.
That committee.
Conversation if you'd like.
All right. Good enough. Is that
Mr. Chairman, what is the history of why this is a board appointed committee at all? Amelia Day.
We had to get something together decades ago for the bicentennial. And there was a committee formed to do that. And I think everybody had fun in the process and decided it was something they'd like to do annually. So that's how the Amelia Day Committee got its roots, got kicked out.
Okay.
all right? So you're going to contact the chairperson of that committee and see whether or not.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can.
Can I just respond to Mr. Scott for a second? I've had that question for a long time as well. And while Mr. Harvey, to the best of my personal recollection, gave an accurate statement of the past history, I seriously question whether this needs to be a board committee going forward. I mean, it seems like this could be a community organized event. The board, to the best of my knowledge, provides no funding, support, or any other way. It actually seems rather strange to me that we are the ones to appoint committee members to that. I mean, we don't do it for the fair or any other local event.
I think.
So I'd like to put that on a future agenda for some discussion.
Yeah, I was going to say that we need to look at that committee.
I think I wouldn't want to have the discussion without, some of the members of the Amelia Day Committee. So I wouldn't want to make some decisions without them, of course. But I think it needs to be better understood at minimum while we're appointing them if we're going to continue that.
Mr. Harvey, I think it's a good start if you just go ahead and contact that chairperson and let's go from there.
Yeah, let's get their perspective on it.
Right. All right. All right. Item number 4, discussion of future meetings. Board will decide whether web meetings will be continued or physical meetings will resume. What did you hear tonight during the comment period?
Well, nobody wants to jump in.
I will, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we had just started getting citizens actively engaged, and then this quarantine hit, and they kind of fell off the wayside. And there are internet problems in the county. There's communication issues there. I would love to see the meetings go back live and in person to get our community ramped back up and get them involved. Joseph and I campaigned and pushed hard for community involvement, and out of no fault of anybody's, it fell flat on its face in March. So I have a feeling that if we go back live in person, I think your community will follow suit.
I would echo those sentiments also, Mr. Wyatt. We just, unfortunately, there's a sequence of events that have occurred I think contributed to some of this. And so if we can get back to our physical meetings, I think it would be helpful.
I agree. And, the school board is meeting in person. They've been doing it for several meetings now. You just need to do it safely and social distance enough, wear masks if you have to or you want to, but we need to just stick with the guidelines, and I'm all for getting back together too.
Okay, Mr. Harvey, you got your.
Yep, yes, sir.
All right,
May I add one comment to that, Mr. Harris?
Sure.
I agree with everything that was said already. I do think it will be challenging to do the social distancing in the courtroom due to its space. And I would suggest that administration talk to the schools about possibly using the auditorium. While I don't expect we're going to have the large numbers we did earlier this year, it would allow a reasonable number of attendants while spacing out.
I would agree with you.
When Dr. Harper's still on, maybe we could ask her to look into it.
Dr. Harper, are you still there?
Yes, sir. I'm texting the high school principal as you're speaking.
All right. So you heard the conversation.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Mr.
All
Harris,
right.
we're gonna try to do the planning commission meeting in July live at the conference room. Hopefully I can spread everybody out far enough there. And that will entail you folks too, as 2 joint public hearings that night.
All right.
I would worry a little bit about the size of that room for that number of people, but I'll leave that to you. You know, you planning it, not me.
Yeah, we're gonna use both rooms to spread it out.
All right. In other words, so you're going to be handling that.
We go give it a shot.
Give it a shot. All right. Item number 5, Uniform Agricultural Appraisal Report. The appraisal report for the county property on Grub Hill Church Road has been completed. Mr. Harvey?
Yes, sir. This was an issue that was on the March agenda for discussion. And of course, we had to revert this to emergency items, and this was not deemed to be emergency, but now we've got some time, so we brought it back. Here is the appraisal report, and it's pretty much self-explanatory, and we presented it as requested.
All right. Comments or questions from board members?
I apologize.
Yes.
I'm not finding that in my book. Where
It's not in
is
the
the
book.
appraisal itself? Well, how did we receive it?
Electronically, I guess in March.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
I've
one
seen-
from
I've seen it. Yeah,
okay.
we've
That's it.
seen
I
it.
thought
We've
it was
seen it.
something recent. Yes, I agree. I thought it was something that had been recently sent. I apologize. Thank you.
No, we received it about a couple months ago.
Yes, I agree.
Any,
So, Mr. Chairman, I believe the reason it's on the agenda tonight is that we want to suggest that we put that property on the market.
Agreed.
all right.
Can't see any future use for it, and we could use the money to do some other things.
All right. Other questions comments from board members? What's the pleasure of the board?
I would make a motion that we put the Ashman or the Grub Hill Church Road property on the market for the value listed in the assessment.
All right.
Or the appraisal, I'm sorry.
The appraisal, that's right. Okay. Further discussion on the motion? If not, let's vote. District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4,
Aye.
District 5 vote aye. All right, that motion carried. Mr. Harvey, you got your
Yes, sir.
directions, all right? Next item is that of public hearing to amend the fee and rate schedules ordinance. We were to have a public hearing to allow the public comment regarding the fees and the rate schedules of the Amelia Cordi Sanitary District. We had included them along in the budget for 2021, as a matter of fact, and that entailed an increase. And so because that action entailed a public hearing, am I right, Mr. Harvey?
Yes, sir. That's correct. And for those that don't have it right in front of them, the telephone number is 1-844-992-4726. And the code to get in is 795-778-938.
All right. Any other questions or comments you want to make before we open the public hearing?
I think you've got Daryl, you've got David, and you've got Carla Cave on. And the folks are here that can answer any question that anybody might have, for sure.
No questions, just need to hear if there's any public.
No question, just need to hear whether there's any public comment out there. Anything hanging out there?
I have nothing as far as emails.
All right.
I see no callers at this time.
I'll tell you what, let me take the fund request from Holiday Lake, and then I'll come back to it. If I've had any calls come in, I can go back to it. How about that?
I thought, Mr. Chairman, that the fund request from Holiday Lake was going to be rolled in with the board committee.
Oh, yes, that's correct. That's correct. All right. Let me hold a public hearing open for a few minutes.
Okay, again.
Why don't we go ahead and deal with some of the information in the county administrator's report?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we move on to that, I had somebody text me a while ago, just for clarification, if you could reiterate what this CARES Act funding committee, how it's going to work and who's going to decide what and what gets brought back to the board. Can you expand on that?
From what I'm hearing, it's going to model the way, I think Nottaway is doing that. Isn't that right, Mr. Harvey?
Yes, sir.
Would you explain that process?
Well, I haven't talked to Ronnie about it. What it says is 2 members of the Board of Supervisors have been appointed to recommend priorities, accept applications, and report to the full board. And the priorities that are recommended are to reimburse the county for out-of-pocket expenses, reimburse Nottaway Emergency Squad and Burkeville Rescue for their expenses, reimburse 3 towns for their out-of-pocket expenses, and they're advertising this week for applications from small businesses. We will issue grants to cover part of the losses of those that qualify. So those are the priorities it looks like they have come up with. And it doesn't say anything about how many applications they've accepted. Once they do that, it says report to the full board. So I'm going to assume that the committee recommends the priorities, develops and recommends them, and begin to accept the application, certainly with staff assistance. And then they report to the full board for a decision.
Okay. In other words, I'm hearing what you're saying. The committee puts that information together, or the requirements together, and it receive the applications, and those applications are then on request to the board for the final decision to be made by the full board.
Okay, I think the confusion.
That was not my understanding. That was not my understanding from our earlier discussion.
That's right. That was the confusion earlier. Is that Joseph said that the county administrator could decide where the money went. So, which way is it? Which way is it?
And I believe we have Carla on here, but from my reading of the CARES Act information that we've been provided, the board is not required to make any decisions around that. It was given to the county to distribute, and then it's up to the county to determine how. We could put a rule in that says the board has to make every funding decision, but that's not required. As Mr. Gore said earlier, we have to accept the funds and appropriate them, which we did.
And the usage are pretty specific.
Yeah,
So,
the usages are spelled out within the law, and we've actually shared those, several of us, on our Facebook pages with the constituents as well.
Okay.
Now, I would certainly recommend, that we want to share with the county, of course, however those funds are spent, although they're going to see them regardless. I do want to clarify that for the citizens, because just like tonight, we have all financial reports which show every bit of money going out of the county is available to citizens every month. I know board members know that. But I think we can put together a nice report that shows very clearly where that money goes. I think, though, the concern is if we have to wait and come back for monthly meetings, you're not going to make much progress on distributing the funds.
Yeah, well, I would agree with you there. Anyway, we don't really need that extra leg in there. I agree with you.
yeah, so just mechanically, I'm just trying to understand and help other people understand.
Right.
Will these decisions be made exclusive of the board? And for instance, if 15 companies submit applications and there's not enough money to go around, who's going to decide which companies get the money and which ones don't? We need to just talk about that process so we all are on the same page.
I would say, as one of the two that was nominated for this, I would say that if we're going to be giving it out to individual people or businesses, that we should come back and give very clear criteria to the full board about how we plan to do that. Based on the amount of money that the county itself has already determined it needs to spend, as well as groups like the schools and nonprofits, quasi-government agencies like the 4-H camp, I'm not convinced there's going to be money left over to give individuals and businesses. I hope there is, but I'm not convinced of that.
Well, I think if you take this thing that Ronnie Rourke said, use it as a template between Sean, Mr. Easter, Taylor, and Carla, and probably me, unfortunately, is to develop that template and put some marching orders together, some directions together, get it back to the board, let them say, yes, this will work, you guys push forward. And I think that's probably what you're trying to get to.
I think that's probably
well said.
That's probably the way they are doing theirs. I don't know. I haven't seen the.
Okay. I'm just trying to avoid down the road having.
I'm hearing you.
Problems with fair, accusations of
yeah.
unfairness and cronyism, and we need to make sure we're completely open about how this is done and why everything is being done. That's all I'm asking.
Absolutely
agree with you.
All right, then.
And this money is it's actually I guess you would consider a reimbursement process. Am I correct? Like you have to spend the money and then you get reimbursed.
You get reimbursed.
So I think everybody needs to understand that as well. It's not like you're just handing out cash to go buy stuff. You would have to go purchase your items. They would have to be approved items, and then you would get that reimbursement. So.
Well, and then David, the folk that you mentioned a few minutes ago, those 5 people, is it possible for you all to take that template, flesh out the process, and get it to that point whereby it can be implemented? I guess that's my question.
Yes, that's absolutely. And the guidelines are very specific of when and how this money can be used. So it's just a matter of sitting down and making something that's going to work and push forward with this thing.
How about that, Mr. Scott?
Works for me.
All right. Thanks for.
I think Mr. Gore wants to say something.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Scott. Mr. Chairman, just to weigh in a little bit on this discussion, I agree with the path you're going down. That group can create the plan based on this conversation and bring it back to you. But then ultimately, you've appropriated the funds for the purposes under the Act. So if the board is comfortable with the basic structure of the plan and the goals, then the administration can distribute the money.
That's right.
I also agree with Mr. Easter. I think the bulk of these funds are probably going to be consumed by the county's needs and county expenditures that have already been made, especially when you throw in the school division, fire and EMS. So one comment I want to make on any grants to businesses, that is under state law, and we've been advising all our county clients of this. Under state law, the county is generally precluded from giving money directly to private businesses.
Private citizens.
So my recommendation, if there's going to be a pot of money left at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, however it works out, for businesses that have eligible expenditures, my recommendation, you budget for that and you appropriate those funds to the IDA, and you have the IDA as the entity that makes those grants. That is permitted under state law. And then, so that's sort of a logistical hoop to jump through, but I think it's cleaner under state law to do it that way. It also gives another body, the IDA, that can take a look at these businesses and can work with county staff and the subcommittee as to whether these businesses qualify or the expenditures qualify.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Gore.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. That's good. Before I go back to the county administrator's report, then, do we have any callers hanging out there for the public hearing to amend the fees and rate schedules for the sanitary district?
I'm not seeing any callers at this time.
No emails at this time.
All right, I think I've held it open long enough. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll motion to accept the changes as proposed.
Let's close the public hearing first. I'm gonna close the public hearing. And you got a motion to approve or to accept the changes that have been made based upon that was presented when we did the budget, in other words.
Yes, and as outlined in the.
As outlined.
Yes.
All right.
It's an actual ordinance. It's
ordinance. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Ordinance. That's right. Further discussion. If not, all those in favor, let's vote. Vote District 2.
Aye.
District 3.
Aye.
District 4.
Aye.
And District 5 votes aye. That motion carries. All right. Administrator's report.
okay. First item is waste management, tab 8. The first fee for the month of May was $203,295.57. The Commonwealth Regional Council has submitted their items for interest under tab 9. If there are any questions on that, I'd be glad to try to answer them. And before we get to board member comments, we've got Kent Emerson here, and we'd like for Kent to do a sort of a status report on where we are with our different issues that we haven't seemed to be continuing popping up. Mr. Emerson?
Yes, sir. Good evening. I just wanted to give you all a brief update on the ongoing emergency operations. I'm sure y'all are watching the numbers regarding the spread of the virus, as we all are. County currently has 38 cases, including 9 hospitalizations and unfortunately 1 death. There is one statistic that we watch that is not out there unless you specifically keep up with it. And that's a look at the number of new cases on a 30-day basis. And we watched this over time. And we basically saw a steady increase to a peak of about 15 active cases in mid-April. And then from there, it declined down through around mid-May. And since then, we've seen another peak. And if you look at the data, as of June the 14th, which was just a few days ago, we had 21 cases over the past 30 days. We've seen a small decrease since then, but it just gives you a little better idea of potentially how many active cases are currently in the county. We can't truly track that, but if you look at the number of new cases over a 30-day period, it kind of gives you an idea. And we did see a spike after mid-May. It's started to come down a little bit since then, but with only a couple of days of data, it's hard to say if that's a trend or not. Just wanted to update you all on that. The virus is still there. It's still being spread. On a separate note, we've also been monitoring the recent civil unrest events within the state and nationally. While this is primarily a law enforcement issue, we have been in contact with the sheriff's office and the Commonwealth's attorney. So we're all communicating. There has been some local protesting, from what I understand. As far as I know, that's all been peaceful exercising of their rights to assemble, the right that we all have. We're continuing to monitor the situation with those folks, but that's all I have for you for tonight. I just wanted to update you on the emergency situations.
All right.
Any questions for Mr. Emerson?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
Kent, is there a medical, or has there been one thing I haven't heard is there a medical definition of active case, meaning like the aggregate number of 38 really means nothing to me. That's since the first test. I mean, has the medical industry come up with a standard to tell us? I understand you said we're guessing at about 15 cases, but are they saying active cases are within the last 3 weeks, or are you over it after 2 weeks? Or I would just love to see the state and the nation start telling us what current cases are and not this aggregate number that scares everybody so bad.
I absolutely understand what you're looking for, and unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that.
So everything I've seen is, I mean, it is, everybody's getting the same information. So.
Everybody, yeah.
We're not getting any.
Okay. Yeah, everything I've seen says confirmed cases, not active cases.
Right, which is a compounding aggregate number.
I don't believe that the Virginia Department of Health truly has the capability to actively track those people. I think that's the answer that you're going to get from the Department of Health. And
so I guess
to say that you're over it in 2 weeks, I think some people may be over it in 2 weeks, but I think other people may be over it in 30 days. And it's different for everybody. And I think that's the struggle. I absolutely understand what you're looking for. I just don't have access to that.
So the only thing they can really lead on would be actual new cases. I guess that would be the only number.
That's what you see. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
I think one of the definitions that I've seen people use is an active case is a case that was tested positive, but it's been 3 days since they showed any signs that it's run its course, and they're 3 days past any symptom. And that's one definition for active.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Other questions?
Whoops.
Okay, go ahead, Mr.
All right, the next thing I've got for you is the operations report for Friday. I guess anybody that was watching the governor's news conference yesterday realized that he, with 2 days' notice, granted a state holiday for certain folks. And I think it was executive personnel. The Amelia County personnel policy has a specific set of holidays that we observe. Plus, it says that we observed anything that the special holidays as announced by the governor. But because it was so little advance notice, and because our citizens have been bouncing back and forth between closed buildings and things, we didn't want to close the offices up. So I issued, working with staff, we issued this policy this afternoon. And I'll read it. Here's what the memo said. Hello, yesterday the governor declared a state holiday for Friday, June 19th in honor of Juneteenth. Our general district courts and circuit courts and the registrar's office have already heard from Richmond that they will remain open. Main DMV offices, state offices, VDOT, and the health department will be closed. Due to the short notice, we feel that it will be a hardship on our residents and taxpayers if we close the county offices down completely. To address that issue and honor the governor's edict of an extra vacation day for our employees, we will be issuing a floating holiday for employees to use beginning this Friday, June 19th, and up until July 31st. County offices will remain open to support its citizens and operations. Please share this with staff. If you have any questions, please call. So we're treating this the same way that we treat that extra day during the holidays from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And I do need to say that this is a one-time thing until the General Assembly hears the request and makes it an annual day. But, other counties are handling it similarly. Some counties are closing down completely. Prince Edward is completely shutting down. Mecklenburg's completely shutting down. And I think some others are still under discussion. So that's where we are.
All right.
It's your call.
All right. If there are no questions on that, the next thing we're looking for is some guidance on the July 8th workshop. We're looking for a topic and agenda materials, and I know we've been talking planning. We're also looking to hear what type of a location and platform we want to use. If it's going to be in person, that's fine. We can prepare for that. And if it needs to be like the IDA meeting was, with some physical and some internet-based, that's fine too. We just want to know what the pleasure of the board is.
If at all possible, I would prefer in person.
Me too.
I agree. I will note that I'll be out of the state on that day, though. That doesn't mean you can't proceed. I am very in favor of the planning sessions. I think we need, I hate to say it this way, but planning for the planning. Like, I think we need some structure around the planning. I worry that if, 5 of us just get in a room to talk about planning, I don't know that it's going to be incredibly constructive, yet I feel we desperately need planning. I wonder if we should talk to some external resources and see if we can get a facilitator who has experience in this, perhaps.
About the fellow that you heard from in, I guess it was February. I can't call his name now. Is he somebody that could help with that?
Oh, Will Cockrell?
That's it, Will Cockrell.
That's who it is. Yeah, I think it would be appropriate to touch base with him.
We can do that. If what I heard was we need some help to structure a planning process. Is that what I heard?
That
was my statement. I don't know that I'm speaking for the majority, though.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do have a little concern that we all agreed, seemed to be in agreement in January that we wanted to do these, and yet here we are in June, and we have actually had 0 planning meetings where we planned anything. That's a little concerning that we can't move forward if we don't move forward. So we definitely need to get on the ball, and I know we've tried a few times and things went awry. I think we just need to step up and step right on it.
I think that there was some extraneous things that contributed to where we are at this point. I don't think that it's totally the fact that we just didn't have anything to do. I think that we had some extenuating circumstances that prevented us from hitting this thing directly. I think it would be good if you can contact this gentleman and let him come in and at least we can have some discussion and discourse with reference to putting that activity together. I really do.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem with having Will come in, but I think if he's going to do that, we need to have it all worked out well in advance what we're going to do when he gets there. I don't want to just show up and have him do something that I don't particularly agree with. I'm sure the other guys don't want that either. We need to have some, we need to give him an assignment of what it is we want him to do. We don't want another comprehensive plan. We have that.
No.
So what we need help with is how do we go about turning that into reality?
Yeah, something practical and actionable. I agree, Mr. Scott.
I just don't want him to come in and back up all the way to first base and start all over again. We just don't need that, and we don't have the time for it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add on that note, I think that now is a key time for us to be working on our economic development director. With all of the unrest in the cities and the talking of defunding police departments, I think we're going to find a lot of big corporations are going to consider being in the city a liability. Insurance companies aren't going to insure them. Employees might not be safe. And we may soon be on the outskirts of these Tri-Cities areas where these corporations may want to come and plant. And I think that would be a key time for an economic development director that has the knowledge, the skill, and the time to jump up and down with a flag and wave at some of these businesses.
Yep.
All right. So, for example, then if that's the case, you come up with a topic, an area that I think that maybe we can again try to pursue, and that is the one of the economic developer, and talk about what are our expectations of
Yeah,
sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this came up at the last IDA meeting, and David Whitaker passed out the job description that he's written, which is very good for everybody to take home and review and be thinking about. I think Sean and you and Tommy need to get a copy of it too if you don't have one already.
Okay.
And we need to be thinking about that too.
Maybe that's what we ought to drill in on.
Y'all just described the agenda for your workshop, and you don't need to bring somebody in to tell you how to talk about it.
All right.
I think you're on course. I'll put an agenda together and send it to y'all folks. If you get agreement, then push forward to it. I don't think we need to pay $750 for somebody to come in and listen to you say what you already know you need to say.
All right, then let's.
Yes, sir.
I agree with that.
That's our topic for this next planning session. I'll get together with you, David.
Yes, sir. We'll make it happen.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else that, let's see.
Mr. Chairman, the last thing that I would like to put out there is the NACO annual meeting is being moved from the homestead where it's historically held, and that's because of the number of rooms in the meeting facility. They're going to move it either to Norfolk or Virginia Beach. I'm not exactly sure which one, but it'll be November the 8th through the 10th. And these are events that you have to get your room reservations in for pretty quickly. So if there's any board member that would like to go and planning on going, we'll go ahead and get a reservation put in their name. I saw where the deadline was August the 16th on several of the forums for that rate, but I don't know if they hold the rooms that long. So I think the sooner the better to get us your indications, and we'll have the arrangements made for you.
All right.
I can tell you I plan to attend again this year. It's already on my calendar.
All right.
So we've got some time. So if everybody else takes a look and see where they'll be November the 8th through the 10th, it's usually a Sunday through a Tuesday. That's when it typically is. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Yeah, it's Sunday through Tuesday, Taylor. 8th, 9th, and 10th.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, that's all I've got here.
All right. Any board members have any other comments, additional comments you want to make?
I have some questions on the county administrator's report.
All right, District Chairman.
Can we, first of all, I'd like to thank you for whoever did it, Carla or Taylor, for taking care of the vision and dental for some of the employees that aren't taking the health insurance. And can we get a water tower update briefly? Daryl's on.
Daryl is on. Daryl, if you can unmute and let everybody know what's going on. There you go.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The GBC tank, they're working on the paint on the interior now. Of course, the weather's messed them up. They also have started on the exterior of the tank, doing some priming and stuff. That project is probably about a week behind the schedule that was presented earlier. Maybe 2 weeks after this rainy week we're having now. The SCADA system has been upgraded, installed, and is working. Everything with the exception of the GBC tower, which will go online when that tank is reconnected. So we're about 2 weeks behind schedule, but everything is working. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have about it.
No.
All right.
So the plan is to paint the outside of it as well.
Yes, sir. Y'all approved the painting of the outside
Perfect.
a while back, and but they will be going to the big tank to do the interior before they do the outside of the GBC tank.
Okay.
Unless something happens with the cure time and stuff like that, where they can stay at the GBC tank, but that is the plan.
Okay.
All right.
Also, what's the status on the codification service, like Municode or some other one? Is that happening, or we've talked about it a couple of months ago? We approved it. What's up with that?
David, you want to answer that one?
Yes, we've received 2 RFP results. They came in very similar. I bounced them through Jeff over the last couple of days. Both of them are really good. Both of them price-wise are about the same. I'm going to get with Taylor tomorrow because I just heard from Jeff that we're going to bring both of them in and try to do a face-to-face with them to sort out the little bit of differences in which one may be better for us. So we're pretty much spot on to be able to go somewhere with this thing and probably hire somebody right after the first of the fiscal year. And timeline, it's going to take a while to put this in place based on the timelines that both companies gave. But I think you're going to end up with a decent product when it's all done. So that's moving forward. It's not dead in the water at all, Roger.
All right. Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Whitaker, can I just make a suggestion that you include or offer to include some of the constitutional officers? I know particularly the Commissioner of Revenue's office would be very impacted by the codification services as a positive impact. Maybe that would be helpful if you're bringing them in.
Yeah,
just something for you to consider.
The way that whole thing will work is their ordinances and stuff will be incorporated in the legal review that goes into it at the time it's being written. And we'll be bouncing that off of each office that owns an ordinance. Though the county owns the ordinance, the responsibility for the information, we will check. It has to.
I just meant when you're bringing them in, the two that you're talking about coming in to see the difference in their services. I'm just saying they might be helpful in helping you pick a final candidate.
We can do that. That's not a problem.
But everything else you said sounds exactly right too, and I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I hate to beat a dead horse, but what's the status on the confidentiality agreements? The treasurer and the Commissioner of Revenue still don't have copies.
I'm going to let Mr. Gore address that. We got 15 in the file, and Mr. Harris saw him this afternoon. Mr. Gore, if he's still here, there he is, address that.
Address what specific question, Mr. Scott?
why the Commissioner of the Revenue and Treasurer cannot get copies that they've asked for of the confidentiality agreements.
Oh, on that, I mean,
Protecting
my
the
advice,
offices.
my advice to the county is that personnel files, these are personnel records, and that they are to stay in the personnel file of that employee. That's just my advice on personnel files. You know, that's now that doesn't mean that an auditor can't be given access to them, but you know, county doesn't have to follow my advice, but that's how I've advised on how to deal with those files.
Well, since every form looks the same anyway, I don't know if there's, I mean, I don't know how necessary it is to see each individual confidentiality agreement. Is it possible for at minimum, the board to know which employees have refused to sign them?
I think you just heard from the administrator that he's provided that information to the board chair.
Oh, I did not. Maybe my mic cut out. I'm sorry. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. I provided them to the chairman.
Oh,
okay. So my question is, can the other board members find out? Like, I don't know how we get this put to bed and completed until we follow through.
Yeah, and I don't think Frank, I may be wrong, but I'm not so sure that these two even have to have copies as much as they want to know that the people have signed them.
Right.
They want to know that their office information is protected. And until now, I mean, we've been talking about this for 2 years, and it's like pulling teeth to get an answer. Physical copies, I don't know, are necessarily required. It's more being listened to and knowing that they're being protected. I mean, it's ridiculous that this has been going on so long, frankly.
Mr. Gore. Mr. Gore, you still there?
Yes, sir.
And I've looked at, I've seen the folder, and I know that there are something like 12 to 15 of them that are there now. I haven't gone through and looked at to see who, what, where, and that good thing. I think the important thing to me is that now, the important thing to me is that we are legal in terms of what.
Yes. Yes.
That I guess that's the only question I have.
But how about some communication to the people that brought it up that want to know we're legal, instead of just leaving them out there, flapping in the wind? They don't know what's going on. They don't know who signed anything.
Yeah, obviously we're not 100%, or someone would just say that.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to state my request again, and y'all are welcome to deny it, but I'd like it on the record. I would like to know which specific employees have not yet signed the confidentiality agreement and what actions will be taken from there.
Well, I will say there's only one employee I can talk about, and that's me. I have signed mine. Mine is in the file. But I will also say, if anybody can reads the personnel policy, there is no way that anybody can be forced to sign something after they're on board like this. And if we look at page 111 of the Amelia County Personnel Policy, and I've got it.
I know, but we've talked about all this before. I didn't say you could force them. I just said, who are they? Yeah. And I'm not asking you to disclose it publicly here on the meeting, but I would like someone to say out loud, we will not tell the board members who have not signed the document the board wanted signed.
I'll tell you what I'll do, Mr. Easter, and to the rest of the board, if it's that important. I have not gone through and said X, Y, or Z have employee have not signed it. I haven't done that. and if that's what the board wants me to do, I'll do that. I mean, I haven't gone through and looked
We
at.
asked for it last, yeah. I mean, we asked for that last month anyway. So this is, to Mr. Scott's point, this just keeps doing the same thing over and over.
I think we asked in February.
Yes.
Well, it's true. Actually, we voted in February for them to all be done by the end of March. It's a great point,
Yes.
Sean. Yeah,
There's-
I mean, I
there's
think
a
the board is
principle
just
here.
being ignored.
Mr. Gore,
Yes, sir.
again, I know that I've seen the folder and I know the numbers that are in it, and I haven't gone through it. Is it okay for me to do that? I mean, I'll do that if it's okay, legal for me to do it. You know what I mean? To determine who, what, when, where, or who have not signed it. Is that appropriate for me to do, to share with the rest of the board? Because that's what we've been asked for.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Of course it is. I mean, they're employees. They're employees of Taylor, and Taylor is an employee of us.
Okay.
We should have free access to any personnel records as long as we don't make them public. It's
Okay.
ridiculous.
Yes, sir.
It's like the CEO of a company can't go in and look at someone's personnel record.
We all signed the confidentiality agreement.
Was that,
Yeah.
I didn't understand. What was that? Was that a
I'm
question?
just
I don't
saying
know that
that
Who are you
we
talking
all
to,
signed
Taylor?
it, so we should be able to look at it.
I thought Mr. Lyon was asking a question. I didn't.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, he's saying that we all signed a confidentiality agreement, so we should be able to see
If it's
confidential
important,
documents.
if it's important that to put this to bed, I'll get that information to you.
The important
Thank
thing,
you.
Frank,
I have one related but different. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
the important thing, Frank, is that the two constitutional officers who this is a big deal for need to feel comfortable that nobody is entering their offices and having access to information, especially after hours, without having signed a confidentiality agreement.
And it had, and I guess my question
If
is,
they won't sign it, they shouldn't be in there.
yeah, I guess my question is, what, suppose, for example, you got an employee that hadn't signed that particular document, but has signed the confidentiality document when they came aboard. I mean, I guess that's my question.
Well, in that case, my question for Jeff would be, is the confidentiality agreement they signed when they were employed adequate to protect the two officers?
That's what Mr. Gore should tell us that.
Right. But that was so just to be clear, that brings us back to where Mr. Scott said 2 years. I know it's been discussed since January when I started. That was the exact question we started with in January.
Yeah.
This is the most oddly painful thing I've ever dealt with, including outside government.
Yeah, and the perception is that Taylor basically just doesn't want it done. So therefore, it's not getting done.
I don't even have a perception.
That's the perception, and well, I do, and other people do too.
Well, I'll go through and I'll look at it personally, as a matter of fact, and get that information to you.
Thank you. I have a related but different question. Mr. Harvey, you said we can't force people to retro that have already employed. I understand that. We've talked about it a number of times. Is this new confidentiality agreement required for all new employees going forward? Has that been implemented?
The only employee that we have hired since this request has been in place have signed the agreement and it is in the file. Yes, sir.
Okay, that's fine. As long as it's standard practice going forward, that answers my question. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to that point, it would probably be, if that's the direction the board clearly wants to go in for new hires, then I would recommend that you revise the personnel policies to require that. Because currently they don't. The personnel policies have a general statement that clearly prohibits the unlawful sharing of confidential information. So I think Mr. Taylor was pointing to that earlier. That's already a blanket provision in your personnel policies. But the personnel policies don't require the signing of this specific statement. If the board wants that to be clear going forward for new hires, then I would recommend that you put that, actually amend the policy to include that requirement. And I also would not try to compel employees prior to that policy change that have been employees for a while to sign it. They're already subject to the general provision, but going forward, it can be a clear policy for all new hires.
All right, so you're recommending that.
You can make a motion right now just to amend the personnel policies provision on confidentiality to require new hires to sign the confidentiality statement that's been provided to staff.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so just to be clear.
Got a motion.
Oh, go ahead. So
Got
moved.
Now, further discussion. Go ahead. Further discussion. Got a motion, Mr. Scott.
Aye.
District 2, District 3?
You're not even listening.
Aye.
District 4?
Aye.
And District 5 vote aye. All right. Is there anything else that needs to come before us?
So just to be clear, the Commissioner of Revenue and Treasurer will never get a copy of any confidentiality agreements, right?
They will get a,
Is that correct?
based on the motion that was carried, personal policies will be updated in order to.
Right, for future employees.
For future employees.
Okay, because they're going to need, especially the treasurer, I guess, to go back to her attorney, who is the one, attorney and auditor are the ones that are asking for this, so they're going to have to go back and work through all that.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification on that, the information from the treasurer's auditor that was forwarded to me did not indicate that the auditor wanted county administrative employees to sign these. So I have not seen evidence of that, and no one in our practice, and we've got attorneys that have been practicing in local government law for 40 plus years across the state, have ever heard of this being a requirement or a signature like this on a document outside of the staff of the constitutional officer. So I'm not saying it's unlawful or not. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad policy. I'm just saying I've not seen evidence of the auditor requiring it, and I've never heard of another county requiring it.
Okay.
Okay. Will you draft the information? Taylor, you'll get together with our attorney and update those policies?
I think it was just done by resolution, so we'll make sure that those confidentiality agreements that were circulated are provided to every new employee when they come in for their sign-in materials and sign-up materials, and we'll get them taken care of.
All right, good enough. Is there anything else that needs to come before us?
Yeah, while I'm beating dead horses, what about detailed weekly reports from our county administrator? You said last month it was a work in progress. Are we going to get them someday?
I thought that he did a pretty good job with the bulleted information he provided this last time, and I recommended to him that he continue doing that.
I don't think that's detailed enough compared to what we used to get. I'd like to get what kind of thing we used to get.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree,
So why don't we just instruct the county administrator to give it back to us?
All right.
I don't know if Sean and Joseph ever even saw what we used to get.
They were, well, you know, it's interesting that how it was so detailed that there were certain of us who were so presumptuous. We tried to be presumptuous and get one step ahead of information that was either projected to happen, et cetera. I think that, I think I've talked to the county administrator and told him how helpful those reports were. And I thought that.
Yeah, I mean, it was great communication. It answered a lot of questions, so we didn't have to worry about things, and it was really good. And I don't understand why we can't get back to it.
And Mr. Harvey, I wouldn't try to, if it's impossible to get everything put in there, at least provide the format that I like the format that you were doing them in earlier also, and very, very helpful and so forth. And I think that if you could do that, we'd appreciate it.
That's not going to work. You already tried that 4 months ago, 5 months ago. That's not going to work.
County Administrator, Mr. Harvey.
Yes, sir.
Can you resume? Please resume. I think what you're hearing is that if providing, the format that you were using before.
I know the format that I was using before, and I was doing it on Thursday nights, and it took the entire Thursday night, and I'm doing different things on Thursday nights now. It's just only a certain number of hours in the day. So I hear that we want to go back to a narrative as opposed to bullet points, and I'll see what I can do.
Would appreciate it.
Well, I'm sorry. So I haven't seen the old format. I don't even know what we're talking about.
I'll send you some.
Feel free. I will say the bullet points worked great for me. And you know what? Starting that on a regular cadence, I think would be a great progress step forward. I think there has to be a balance too about what's reasonable. So if that's practical, I'm comfortable with that.
I got some feedback from Mr. Easter on that, and I appreciated it. And I think it was like if we could get that every week or every other week, it would be very good. So that I'll do the best I can.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with that. I was happy with the fact that we got it. Sometimes I think we're kind of 2 steps behind or left in the dark, and we play catch up. So I enjoyed the bullet point info we got.
It's definitely better than nothing. It's better than nothing.
Yeah. It gives you time to think and plan rather than shooting from the hip, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it was very helpful, and if you would continue to provide information like that, and even if you have to put it in a bulleted fashion, that's fine for me also. I have no problem with that.
Okay, so we agreed that's a start. That's a good starting point for it.
That's right. And if it,
all right. Because I do understand Mr. Harvey's point too. Like it has to be practical from a time standpoint too.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
So much easier to put together, put it in bulleted form anyway. Also, anyway, is there anything else that we need to? Is there motion? Is there need for a continued meeting?
Not that I know of.
No.
Then I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Got a motion. Further discussion. All in favor? District 1, District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 4?
Aye.
District 5 votes aye. We're adjourned.
Have a good night.